Welcome to Life Point. Stand up. Let's sing together. As I reflect, I find perspective here in the worst and best days of my life. You were always on my side. Let me see your hands. You're in the pain, you're in the promise, and on the days the furnace finds my faith. You're the fourth within the flame. I need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this: my God isn't finished yet. He did it before, He can do it again. So I trust Him with what comes next. Oh, the God I know is known for faithfulness. Yeah, my hindsight says I can trust Him with what's next. Oh, the God I know is known for faithfulness. Yeah, you believe that? There's more ahead than what's behind me. Just through the highs and lows and in between. God, you go ahead of me. Yeah. And when you call me, I will follow. If the water falls beneath my feet, then you pull me from the deep. I need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this: my God isn't finished yet. He did it before, He can do it again. So I trust Him with what comes next. Oh, the God I know is known for faithfulness. Yeah, my hindsight says I can trust Him with what's next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. All right, church, you believe that this morning? I need everybody to wake up. You're looking at me like it's a rainy Sunday morning or something and you're not awake yet. Just smile a little bit, move around, do something, all right? I need to know what the future says, 'cause if the past could talk, it would tell me this. God, we're just so grateful for your faithfulness this morning. We believe your promises. My God isn't finished yet. He did it before, He can do it again. So I trust Him with what comes next. 'Cause my hindsight says I can count on this: my God isn't finished yet. He did it before, He can do it again. So I trust Him with what comes next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. Yeah, my hindsight says I can trust Him with what's next. For the God I know is known for faithfulness. You believe that? Give Him a clap and a shout of praise, church. Good morning. Welcome to Life Point. We are so very glad that you're here. I hope you are glad that you're here. Are you glad that you're here? All right, all right. Well, some of you didn't look that way when the lights were on earlier. Some of you are just like, why is this guy so happy? But anyway, I just thought, I'm here. Might as well have a good time. So let's do that, man. Let's just have a good time together, enjoying what God has done, what He's doing, and resting in who He is and what He is doing. And let's just believe in His promises this morning. Man, I hope that we all can just be here. I know your life is crazy, because everybody's is, but hopefully we can just be here and just enjoy His presence this morning, all right? Let me pray for you. God, thank you so much for bringing us together. Thank you so much, God, that as I look back over my life, I can just see how you wrote this story, God. And it's not always been my favorite story, but God, you've always brought me through the lows and into the highs, God, and I just know, I know when I look back over my life, God, that I can trust you with the story that you're going to write next. So God, we put our faith in you, God. We put our trust in you this morning. We're just so grateful, so thankful for you, God. Would you meet us here, Father? We need you more than ever. So God, just come. God, and we'll just be here, God, waiting for you to hear what you might have to say.
Can go back to the beginning. Can't control what tomorrow will bring. But I know here in the middle is the place where you promised to be. I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? As I walk now through the valley, let your love rise above every fear. Like the sun shaping the shadow, in my weakness your glory appears.
Say this prayer, church. Lift it up.
I'm not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Not enough unless you come. Will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again? Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Not for a minute was I forsaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this place. Come, Holy Spirit, dry bones awaken. The Lord is in this place. The Lord is in this
Say that one more time, church. Lift it up.
Not enough unless you come, will you meet me here again? 'Cause all I want is all you are. Will you meet me here again?
All right, you can have a seat. Good morning. Welcome to Life Point Church. My name is Q. I'm one of the pastors here, and just want to take a second to welcome you. If this is your first time, thanks so much for choosing to hang out with us. If it's your first time watching, thanks so much for checking us out wherever you're catching us live. Can we give a round of applause for our first time folks? Thank you so much for doing that. It's just really good to have you. Man, if you're a guest, we're going to have a message. Todd Oldham, one of our pastors, is going to be teaching here in just a few minutes. And then afterwards, there'll be a time just a response, and then we're going to take up an offering. But if you're a guest, we don't expect you to give us anything. We want to give you a gift. Make sure to come see one of our pastors across the way there at the first time guest area. We just want to meet you, say hello, get to know you, and give you a gift for hanging out with us, all right? Don't forget those cards. If you have prayer requests, we love each week to look over those prayer requests. On those communication cards, there's a place on the back where you can write down prayer requests, things that you'd like for us to pray for our prayer team to pray for. So don't forget to put those on there. I know sometimes you may not be able to stop by and talk to us, or your schedule may be busy, but we want to make sure we're praying for you no matter what's going on in your life. That's really important to us, all right? So don't forget it. A couple things you'd see. We're still taking up ramen noodles. Is it ramen noodles that we're taking up? Ramen, sorry. Excuse my culture. Ramen noodles and Rice Krispie treats. We're doing that for Blessings of Backpack. You can drop those off right there in the corner area. We're going to do that for, I think, one more Sunday. So next Sunday's it. Get it this week. Drop by during the week. I had some folks come by during the week and drop it off. You see a car here, just come up, drop it off. We'll get it put in there for you. We're going to make sure we get as much as that we can to feed our students in need at Albertville and Asbury. So you buy in, go to the grocery store, buy out all the ramen, buy out all the Rice Krispie treats. Let's serve these kids, all right? And then don't forget also, we got baptisms after the first gathering today. And then there's sign-ups for Life Point Next. You go, Q, what's Life Point Next? Maybe you've been coming, and you're like, man, I want to try to figure out how to really get more involved. Life Point Next is your first step. What happens, we feed you lunch on the first Sunday of the month. After you've signed up, we'll have a lunch for you. Some of our staff will be there. And then Lynn and Todd will kind of walk you through the history of who we are at Life Point, what we believe, and what it looks like to get more connected at Life Point. So if that's what you like to do, sign up out there, leave it on your card that you want to be a part of that, and we'll get you put down, okay? Hey, stand up, tell some people hey around you, and we'll get rolling here in just a second.
Lift it up, he defeated the grave, raised to life, our God is able. For the Lord, our God is able. For the Lord, our God is able. For the Lord, our God is able.
right. Good morning, Life Point. How is everybody? All right. Good deal. Well, my name is Todd, and it is great to be with you this morning, this rainy morning. I think we're almost caught up on our rain. Maybe could use a little more to settle the dust, but we're almost there. And I'm just excited to be with you to be able to talk some more about these buckets, really. What we've been talking about is bucket list. And if you haven't been here, if you're just tuning in with us for the first time, and this is your first time joining us online maybe, or even here in the building, we've been talking about the idea of things that we want to accomplish before we die. I mean, that is really the core idea behind a bucket list. Bucket lists are those things that people want to accomplish in their lives, during the course of their lives. And usually those things are things like, hiking the Andes, or things like seeing the Great Wall of China, jumping in a squirrel suit off a mountain, different things like that. There's all kinds of different things that may appeal to you that you want to do before you end your time on this earth. But we've been taking a twist on that and looking at those things in a Christian sense or in a spiritual sense, and looking at the things that are really important that we accomplish in a sense, or that are accomplished in us, maybe a better way to say it, that happen to us and in us before we leave this earth. And so we've dealt with a number of those. I encourage you to go back and listen to some of those, because we've been in the series for quite a little while. But today we are going to take another step in that journey. And before we get started, I'd like to just invite us to entrust this time to the Lord and ask for His guidance. So let's pray. Father, thank you again for this morning. I thank you so much for the ways you care for us, the ways you provide for us, the ways you guide us. But we thank you for the instruction that you give us in your word. Father, would you guide and guard what I say this morning, that it would benefit those who hear. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. All right, so we are this morning, just to kind of let the cat out of the bag and tell you what we're talking about this morning, the thing that we're talking about on your bucket list that maybe not on your bucket list but should be, is that before you exit this world, before you run out of time down here, I would say that it is really important that you find contentment. So today we're talking about the thing on the bucket list, if you just want to write that down somewhere, or it will become evident as we go on, is to find contentment. And I don't think there's anyone here that would say, I don't want to find contentment before I die. Some of you may say, I'm already content, I'm already there, I've already arrived. Well, that's wonderful. But there's others that may say, wow, I would love to really get to that place where I feel contented with my situation, that I just feel like I'm got everything that I need, that I'm happy where I'm at, and that everything is just fit together for me. I don't know that there's anybody that would say, no, that's not me, I don't like that idea. Now, we have talked about here at Life Point before, you've heard people teaching that have said things like, I'm teaching this from weakness. Have you ever heard somebody say that I'm teaching or preaching from weakness? Yeah, so you've heard that, you've run into that. Well, this morning, I'll tell you that, I've done that many times in the past, but this morning is actually, and I'm being very frank with you, is not one of those times. Because I'm probably one of the most content people I know. In fact, I basically gush contentedness. I would say that I actually have this issue in the bag, probably like few others. And so, as you sit here this morning, I just invite you to bask in really the golden rays of knowledge that I want to dispense. And so, please just prepare yourself for this, because it's going to be fantastic. Okay. Liar, liar, my pants are on fire. None of this is true. What is that? What is the guy that's on TV that he's a chef and he always cusses at everybody? Gordon Ramsay. Yes, Gordon Ramsay. So me talking to you today about contentment is pretty much the same thing as Gordon Ramsay doing an anger management seminar. I have got, I mean, I feel totally inadequate to talk about, but I feel like it's important to talk about because sometimes those things that you struggle with and deal with on a daily basis, on a moment-by-moment basis sometimes, this is real life for me. This is real struggle. And I guess I shouldn't really even say it's a struggle for me because I don't know that I struggle with discontentment. I just pretty much curl up in a fetal position in the corner of the room and let discontentment beat me up. That's really how it goes most days for me. I struggle terribly with this issue. And I don't have an answer for why that is. I don't know how to identify that to you and say, well, this is, I can draw a line and say, this is why I struggle so much with discontentment. But I wish I could. But I will say this, that I have tried to wrestle down and understand why I feel discontent. And I think it's important that you kind of dig down to the source and the reason for things that you struggle with, because if you don't really get down to the source, you can't really deal with it. And I've thought about that a lot. If you had a disease in here, for example, if you were diagnosed with a disease, I bet what you would do is you'd go to the internet and you would research everything you could about that disease. You would find out all about it. You would compare what your doctor was saying with what the internet said, and you would really try to drill down and figure out, why am I this way, and where's this coming from, and what causes this? Well, that's what I've done with my struggle with contentment or my issue of discontentment. And it comes down to a really ugly word when you get right down to it. I'm going to be very honest with you. When I look at discontentment in my life, and I think this is true for a whole lot of people, it comes down to the issue of envy. Now, that's an ugly word, isn't it? I mean, nobody in fact, I'll just ask that. Has anybody ever been in a prayer group or a small group and had somebody raise their hand and say, you know what, my problem is I'm just envious. Please pray for me because I'm envious. Has anybody ever run into that or had somebody say, maybe you have, but I can pretty much say with absolute certainty that I've never been in a group where somebody has told me, or even individually, where somebody said, you know what, the problem with me is I'm just envious. But this morning, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to tell you, I really think that's what's going on in me. And that's where my discontentment finds its origin. And envy is one of those secret sins. It's one of those sins that's not apparent. I don't know that anybody in here would look at Todd and say, man, that guy's an envious dude. I don't know that you would just kind of, talk to me for 5 minutes or even for 5 years and say, gosh, Todd just strikes me as envious. But that is the truth of the matter. That's really what lives inside of me. And so maybe there are some of us here that struggle with that same thing. And maybe you've never put a word to it. Maybe it just feels like things are not quite right the way you'd want them to be in your life. But maybe they just doesn't feel like I've arrived at where I should be, and I don't know why I'm not happy with where I'm at, and I feel like I've never been happy with where I'm at, and I always feel frustrated with my situation in life, and I just don't know why I'm frustrated with the people around me, and I'm frustrated with what I have, and I'm frustrated with what I do. And maybe that's the best you've been able to identify. But I think just maybe as we look at what we're going to look at this morning, that discontentment you'll find in your life arises from the same place that it derives from in mine. So a few years ago, we bought a used Honda minivan. It's a 2013 Honda minivan, and this Honda minivan. I did not know, you should probably look at what kind of maintenance you have to do to a vehicle before you buy it. But I went ahead and bought this. We bought it from some people that were selling it over toward Huntsville. And so we got this Honda minivan, and after it hit, we bought it with like 80,000 miles on it. Not that that's relevant, but it got to 100,000. And I found out that you have to change the timing belt on a Honda minivan, at least that year, when you get to 100,000. And that's one of those things that you might think you could just neglect. Like I've neglected that on other cars, and it's okay because they just shut off and quit driving, and you have to like steer them over to the side of the road and then have them towed. And I'm good with vehicle maintenance. But this one, as I read on this one, it said if you don't change this timing belt, it's an interference engine and it will destroy the engine potentially if the timing belt breaks. And so I was like, wow, that's motivational for me. So I guess I will do it. And I don't like paying people to do things for me, right? So, and so Tightwad Todd here, so I'm figuring I'm going to do it myself. So I suit up and get my grubbies on, and I get my rubber gloves on so I don't sully my fingernails. And I start tearing that thing apart and get down into it. And I knew from the YouTube videos I'd carefully watched that when you get to there's like this pivot moment in the operation where you better, this is the make it or break it. This separates the women from the girls right here. Okay, this is the one. And what it was you had to have this you have to take this crankshaft bolt off this pulley. And so I had like 3 feet of socket extensions, and I had this big old ratchet that I was working in this giant socket, and I was giving it all I got. I mean, I was moving it, the whole vehicle was moving as I was pulling up on this thing. And I pulled, and I pulled, and I blew the house down. No, I pulled, and that thing came loose all of a sudden. I was like, woo, I got it broke. It broke loose. Yes, yes. And then I looked at it, and what had happened is the ratchet had shattered. At which point I said, well, I'm done. So I packed that thing back up and got it in condition where I could take it back to take it to a mechanic, and by golly, let them deal with it. So it was a failure. Yes, another failure in my life. But let me use that and relate that somehow to contentment. It's this way. I'm not going to change your timing belt this morning, okay? I'm not going to do it. I am not going to give you contentment this morning. You will not, I can promise you, leave this morning and say, Todd has fixed this issue in my life. But what I can do is I can give you maybe a tool that won't break, a tool in terms of a principle that God has laid down in His Word that He has given us graciously that we can use to deal with this issue in our lives. Are you ready for that? Okay, good. So I want to take you back a couple of centuries to a conversation that happened on a lake shore way back then. And it was a conversation between Jesus and one of His earliest followers. And that's where I think there is a key to this. It's been something that I've been able to use to deal with this issue in my life. And just to bring you up to speed, what had happened is Jesus had been crucified. He had died for the sins of the world on a cross. He had been buried. He had been raised again. And after He was raised, He was appearing periodically different places to different people all around, to His disciples. They were seeing Him different places after He was raised from the dead. And so Jesus didn't just didn't go around with His disciples, or they didn't follow Him around after His resurrection. It was more just kind of these different appearances after His resurrection. And so this is one of those appearances. Jesus appeared here by a lake shore. It was breakfast time. In fact, He made His disciples breakfast. And if you recall, Jesus' disciple named Peter had really blown it at the time right before Jesus was crucified. Right before Jesus was crucified, Peter had denied Jesus publicly 3 times. He said, I don't know Him, I don't know Him, I don't know Him. And Peter was reeling from this. So the disciples at this point had gone out fishing. I mean, several of them were fishermen, and so they went out and went fishing. And so while they were fishing there, Jesus appears to them. And that is where we pick up this story. Jesus appears to them. Jesus talks to Peter, and Jesus asks Peter 3 times, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, yes, yes. In fact, 3rd time, he was hurt because Jesus asked him, do you love me? And he kept saying, yes, I do. And so Jesus would say, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, feed my lambs. He was telling him to serve him in the way that he had laid out for him. But at that point, we pick this story up, and it's right here in John chapter 21 is where we're at, and this is where we pick it up. And what happened, what Jesus said next was extremely, really kind of a dark thing to tell Peter. It was pretty hard words to hear, because this is what Jesus said to Peter in 21:18. He said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself, and you used to walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." And just to clarify this, and so I don't want to jump around too much, but I want to jump to this next verse, just in case we were wondering what this was. He says in parentheses, he said this to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. So just think about this. Sometimes we read these stories and we don't put ourselves in the sandals of somebody in the first century. Think about what Peter experienced right here. Peter is standing here by the lake with his Savior, who is just kind of reconciled with him and buried the hatchet in a sense. Peter has denied Christ 3 times. Jesus kind of reinstates Peter here. And after this happens, Jesus, as it were, I'm not going to say, this is not like some kind of lady that reads tarot cards or looks into a crystal ball. This is the Son of God that is saying this to Peter. So put yourself in Peter's shoes, and imagine the Son of God, God the Son, talking to you and saying, "Truly, truly, I'm going to tell you your future. And your future is this. Even though when you were young, you used to do whatever you wanted, when you're old, you're going to stretch out your hands, and another's going to dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." Jesus basically gave Peter a picture of his life in the future that was very dark. I mean, we'd like to hear maybe good things about us. Peter got to hear that he was going to be, and I think this was not lost on Peter. I think Peter understood, because of what's said a little later, Peter understood that this meant his demise. I don't know if he understood. Church history tells us that Peter was crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy of being crucified like his Savior. But he understood that Jesus was talking about the way that he was going to finish his earthly life. I mean, imagine being told that by somebody who really knew. I mean, I can't even imagine knowing tomorrow. I'd be afraid to live tomorrow. But imagine being told how you are going to die, and it's not going to be of old age in a bed somewhere or a nursing home. That you're going to die. You're going to die by crucifixion. You're going to die in an unwilling way. And that is exactly what Jesus said to Peter. So imagine where Peter's head is now. Peter has seen a vision of his future. He knows that it's going to be a dark future for him. He knows that he's going to die in a way that is tragic, that is difficult, that is painful, that is grievous. And Jesus said, after saying this to him, he said to him, "Follow me," which is really significant. We're going to come back to that. But he said to Peter, he said, "This is your future. This is my plan for you. But I want you to follow me. I want you to follow me." Just imagine being in Peter's shoes. And then what happens is Peter, and this is where we really get into our issue here. Peter is reeling from the information he just heard. The text doesn't tell us what was going on in his head, but I can imagine, and you can imagine, being told that by somebody who really knows. And when you're told that by God, you know that it's not going to be changed by anything you do. Then Peter turned. And look at what the text tells us next. Peter turned and he saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. Now, the disciple whom Jesus loved, many of us may know, is the Apostle John, who wrote this. He's the one that wrote this gospel. But he was in Jesus' closest circle. I mean, he referred to himself repeatedly as the disciple whom Jesus loved. So apparently he was just overwhelmed with the love that Jesus had for him. But it says he saw this disciple that Jesus loved following them, the one who also had leaned back against him during the supper and this was at the Last Supper, and it said, Lord, who is it that is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he said to Jesus. Now, this is before the crucifixion at the Last Supper. Remember, Jesus. Everybody was trying to figure out when Jesus was talking about somebody betraying him. Everybody was trying to figure out, well, who is that? Who is that? And they're all like talking to each other. Who do you think's talking? Who's going to betray him? And so, as they were doing that, one of them said, "Hey, John, he likes you best." I mean, he didn't say this. Is my paraphrase. And he said, "John, you ask him." And he told Jesus, and Jesus told John that it's the one that dips the bread with him. But you notice I've made this word green, because that is a very, very, very significant part of this issue of finding contentment or battling discontentment. I don't have to tell you this morning that we live in an age of awareness, right? Now you think back, 50 years, go back 100 years. You think back a most of time, okay? Just before the internet, I guess you'd say. And we had we had books and you had newspapers and things like that, but we had a fairly limited radio and TV, but we had a fairly limited knowledge of what everybody had, at least in a microscopic way. I mean, you didn't know what people were doing on a daily basis. You might have heard something about the rich and famous and that lived in Hollywood, or you might have heard something about this person somewhere doing something, or you might read in a book about somebody doing something impressive. But you didn't have the kind of knowledge we have today. And let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is Instagram. I mean by that Facebook. I mean by that you fill in the social media platform that you want. And as you know, there are many of us, nothing wrong with this, who delight in recording every instance of our lives, right? You will see this happen, and I got to go here, and I did this, and look at my kids, and look what happened here, and look where we went on vacation, and this and that and the other thing. And frankly, I mean, now this is not a social media bashing thing at all, but I for me, as a personal discipline, I had to get off of Facebook, just really because of this issue with envy. Because I see what you all do, and your lives are better than mine, frankly. It's the truth. And I look around, and I see people envy. You don't understand how deep this runs. I wrote down. This is what goes through my head. Okay, you're going to think you're going to sign me up for counseling probably and pay for it. This is the kind of stuff that goes through my head on a daily basis. I just wrote down some of these things. It's true. Now, I'm not making this stuff up. If you get the fish and I just get chicken, if you get more snow, if you have more hair, if your team wins, if you get more vacation time, if your lawnmower cuts faster, if you're healthier, if you're smarter, more gifted, better looking, have fewer headaches, a shorter commute, a closer parking spot, a faster reader, if your kids do better in school, if your dog doesn't bark, if you have cooler shoes, if the dentist tells you don't have cavities, if you have fewer car problems, if you get to work from home, and on and on and on it goes. Those are the kind of things that run through my head all the time. So you're never going to tell me anything good that happens to you again, are you? I don't want to trigger envy in his heart. But we live in this age of awareness. We live in this age where we see what other people have. And we're tempted because oftentimes that's a curated, selected type of thing. We only see a narrow part of that. And Peter sees this guy, sees John, and he says, Lord, what about this man? Peter sees John. And his question goes to this situation, really, that we're talking about contentment, and asks, what about that guy? What about that guy? Because I know that guy is the guy who you love. That he is your special disciple. I know he's your special disciple. And Jesus, you just told me that I am going to die an agonizing death. I have just found out, Jesus, that your plan for me is that I am going to have my arms stretched out and I'm going to go where I don't want to go. It sounds pretty bad, Jesus. Lord, what about this man? This is a devilish question. This is a devilish question. What about? Because if you're like me, that question can wreak havoc in your mind. Because it becomes, oh, what about their house? And what about their car? And what about her husband? And what about his wife? And what about their job? And what about their kids? And that question can just take you places that we don't want to go, because they take us far away from contentment. And when Peter considers his situation and the prophecy that Jesus just uttered over his life, that he was going to die a difficult death, and then he looks at John and says, well, there's Jesus' favorite, and he says, well, what about him? That tells me that what was going on in Peter's heart is he was concerned about that other guy and what he was going to get and how he was going to wind up. Because, let me tell you, these disciples, they knew the broad outline of the plan, and they understood that Jesus was going to be coming to set up a kingdom at some point. And so Peter has just been told he's going to die. He's apparently not going to enter that earthly kingdom and get to serve with Jesus in the high court. And so he sees John, and he says, well, what about John, Jesus? Is he going to die? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to him? And this is what Jesus says. Jesus said to him, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? Jesus said to him, if it is my will that he remain until I come, what is that to you? You got two things going on here. You've got Jesus' will, and you've got this very penetrating, difficult question that Jesus asked Peter. Jesus said, if I want him to hang around, if he's not going to experience a difficult, horrific death, if he's going to continue living until I come back and he's going to reign with me on earth in my earthly kingdom, what is that to you? I ran track for a very dark period in my life during high school. And really, it wasn't because I was some kind of star athlete. I know that's hard for you to believe. But it was really just because I liked a girl on the track team, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. And so I endured that. In fact, I just ran track until my small body ran out of steam and I got mononucleosis and had to terminate my track career right then. But I ran track. And one thing, I didn't learn much from track. I mean, I probably learned some things that I forgot. But one thing I did learn in all those races I lost was my track coach said, don't look around you. Don't look in that lane. Don't look in this lane. Keep your eyes straight ahead and run your race. That's what Jesus was telling Peter here. And that is what Jesus is telling every one of us. When we are tempted to look in this lane or that lane or look at them in that lane over there and say, why does it appear that they're passing me? Why are they doing so much better? Why is their job so much better? Why do they have such a better family situation? Why am I dealing with divorce and their marriage is happy? And why? What about? And Jesus says, if it's my will, this is the plan that you're running. This is the race that you're running. What is that to you? And then he says to Peter again, you follow me. You follow me. Do you know what he was saying? When you take all this together, we just hear this, and Jesus had been saying that his whole ministry. He told these people to follow him day one, right? Well, it's true. But in this context, if you think about what Peter had been told about how he was going to die and about how it was none of his business whether John was going to die. He says to Peter, he says, if I want him to reign, what's that to you? He says, your issue, what you need to worry about, Peter, what you need to be concerned about, what you need to focus on, what needs to be in your eyes, and what needs to be the focus of your vision is that you need to follow me. You need to follow the course that I've set out for you. And frankly, sometimes that course is difficult, right? Sometimes it includes all kinds of things that we wouldn't want. But His plan is best. And as long as we're looking at what other people are doing and what other people have and at other people's races, we are going to deal with the demon of discontentment. If I was to boil this down into one little slogan, it would be this: find your contentment in following Him. Find your contentment in following Him. And that sounds so basic. It sounds so boring. But understand what this means. This means that I don't look at the other people in the other lanes, that I am following Him in the race that He has marked out for me, with my eyes focused on Him, not on anybody else. His plan is not easy, but it's perfect. And I wanted to read you something a guy named John Oxenham wrote as we wrap our time up. And this is it's called God's Handwriting. And this is what he says about God's plan. He says, He writes in characters too grand for our short sight to understand. We catch but broken strokes and try to fathom all the mystery of withered hopes of death, of life, the endless war, the useless strife. But there with larger, clearer sight, we shall see this: His way was right. And His way is right. And it's up to us to follow Him through life, wherever He leads, not looking around. You've got bucket list cards sprinkled around here throughout these seats. And what I encourage you to do, if you would wish to this morning, is to write down on there an area of your life where you need to follow Christ more closely. Maybe it's an area of your life where you are struggling with what other people have or are doing, or maybe it's they've got a ministry that's appears more significant or more meaningful than what you have. Maybe it's people that just seem like they're in a better financial situation. But it's a place where you need to focus solely on Christ and on what He wants for you and to follow Him. I invite you to take one of those cards, write that down. You can throw it in a bucket up here. And that could just be a moment where you say, hey, I'm putting a stake in the ground. I am going to follow Christ. Not looking around, not in this lane or that, but I'm going to run the race that He's laid out for me. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you so much for the privilege of being called by your name, the privilege of knowing you. And Father, there are so many things around us that tell us that we're inadequate, that we're not enough, that we don't measure up, that we don't have what we should, and we don't do what we should, and we failed, and all these things, Father. But I pray that instead of focusing on any of those things, that the focus of our lives would be on following your Son. That we would run the race that He's set out before us with incredible perseverance, knowing that other people's races don't really matter. They're irrelevant to us. It's the race that you've called us to is what matters. It's in Jesus, your matchless Son's name, we ask it. Amen.
Stand and sing this with us this morning, church. Just going to pray this prayer out to Him this morning. Prayer of surrender. The prayer of just finding our contentment in Him, just like Todd just said. is well. When my voice can barely speak, how can I sing you a song in the midst of suffering? Jesus, will you meet me here? Let your peace wash over me. 'Cause I need you now more than ever. Teach my soul to sing. My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble, the sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. You have not left me alone, though the world has let me down. And all of my sorrow and pain, I will trade it for a crown. Thank you for staying with me when the night was closing in. Ever my life, you are still God. I will sing again. Lift it up. My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble, the sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. Still in control. It is well with my soul. Can you say that this morning? It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. The mountains may tremble, sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control. If I could just sit with you a while, you could just hold me. Nothing could touch me, though I'm wounded, though I die. If I could just sit with you a while, I need you to hold me. Moment by moment till forever past. I know the lyrics aren't on the screen because this song just popped into my head backstage while Todd was teaching. It just says, if I could just sit with you a while, if you could just hold me. Nothing can touch me, though I'm wounded, though I've died. Just lift it up, take you to know the words. If not, just let me sing it over you this morning. Just sit in the peace of God this morning. If I could just sit with you a while, you could just hold me. Nothing could touch me, though I'm wounded, though I die. If I could just sit with you a while, I need you to hold me. Moment by moment till forever passes by. My God is still in control, and still He reigns on His throne. Though mountains may tremble, sea billows roll, I'll sing it is well with my soul. My God is still in control. My God is still in control. If you believe that, would you give Him a clap and a shout of praise this morning, church? Good stuff. Are you glad you braved the rain and came out anyway this morning? Aren't you glad you're here? We are so very glad you're here, especially if you're a guest. Can we give our guests one more big round of applause? Thank you so much for coming. If you're a first-time guest, please go see one of our pastors. Get a gift just for showing up today. We want to meet you, get to know you. Man, we would just love to love you and serve you, and that begins with us meeting you. So go meet one of our pastors and check in and get that gift. If you're for our Life Point folks, if you like to give in person, we've got some folks in the back of the auditorium with buckets, and you can drop your offering in there. You can also drop the prayer request, and on your cards and things, you can drop those in that bucket as well. You can also give online. You can give in the app. Let's just continue to be faithful to give, because He is faithful to give us everything that He is all the time. All right? Hey, we love you. There's nothing you can do about it. We'll see you soon. Baptism out in the new foyer in about 10 minutes.